Hey everyone, Anarch here, and today I'm just going to be taking the Prism political quiz. It's just a political quiz that is meant to be as complex as is needed to actually get an understanding of where somebody lies politically. It then sort of categorizes whatever you get into a series of categories, and those categories are used to try to understand your political perspective. So I won't go on for too much longer about that. We'll get started here in just a moment, but I just wanted to say the reason why that I'm making this video is just that I thought it might be interesting. But I thought it might be interesting just for people to hear why I believe the things that I do when asked specific questions. And maybe y'all will want to go and take the quiz yourself and find out where you lie on it. But let's get started. So here it is. This is the main page of the website. You can find the link to this down in the description below. So this is how it's formatted. It's 51 questions. They're over a bunch of different topics, and it doesn't just ask you like strongly agree, strongly disagree, because that can be, kind of reductive. Instead, it gives you a bunch of possible answers. So here we have one over climate change. So all it says is climate change. First one reads, people should not be mandated to do anything to fight climate change. People may voluntarily reduce emissions if they wish. The next one is, we must act to prevent climate change, and everyone must do their part. We should provide incentives for individuals to go green and regulate companies to meet environmental standards. Third one is, the population should be expected to minimize their own waste to ensure that as many resources as possible remain for the state to use to support their interests. Fourth one is, global warming doesn't actually exist. It's crazy to ask everyone to overhaul things like their buildings and cars to combat it. The next one is, corporations and the rich are the biggest contributors to climate change. We should direct most of our regulations at them to ensure that people are not wasting energy powering a giant mansion they don't need. The next one is, I completely disagree with every part of all of these philosophies. And the last one is, I do not care about this issue. So those last ones are on a lot of the questions. They're just a way for you to kind of cop out if you cannot think up an answer to one of these questions, which, for other people is perhaps perfectly fine. But for myself, I will probably be choosing answers to nearly every one of these. So on this one, climate change is extremely real. In fact, scientists predicted that everything that we are seeing was going to happen since essentially the early 1900s. They really got it dialed in somewhere in like the 50s to the 70s. A few mistakes here and there, but the models have been extremely on the nose. One of the most accurate predictions in the history of science. So yeah, climate change is absolutely real. This also brings us to another difficulty of these political quizzes, and that is, it can be a challenge to know whether you are answering the question in the current day with current circumstances, or if you are answering the question in a hypothetical, ideal society. So I'll kind of explain my reasoning as to which I am using to answer these questions, given each of the individual questions. So on this one, corporations and the rich are the biggest contributors to climate change. We should direct most of our regulations at them to ensure that people are not wasting energy powering a giant mansion they don't need. Yeah, I mean, that one is my answer. I would say that, this one seems to be framed almost entirely in the modern world, and what would we do in the modern world? So it seems to me that the answer is that the corporations and the rich, being the biggest contributors, are the ones that should be heavily regulated in order to solve the problem. Everyone must do their part presumes that, us individuals are kind of like equally at fault as the big corporations and the state itself, and that's just absolutely false. Next. This one's just called outsourcing. So the government should own most industry, but should allow competition between them so there's not just one choice. Since they are government owned, we can ensure it is all domestically produced. So the first one is the government should own most industry, but should allow competition between them so there is not just one choice. Since they are government owned, we can ensure it is all domestically produced. The second one is outsourcing manual labor allows our citizens to have cheap goods and not have to do routine manual labor, allowing jobs here to be complex work. The third one is we should remove the minimum wage here. The costs of producing here will be lower than producing abroad and shipping. The fourth one is we should regulate companies to only provide subsidies and government purchases to businesses that perform key manufacturing within the nation, not abroad. The next one is we should impose heavy fees on goods produced in countries with worse labor rights than us to ensure companies can produce everything here and have fair competition. The next one is we should have national manufacturing subsidized by taxes to keep prices competitive with outsourced jobs. Buyers can decide for themselves which are better. The next one is the government should nationalize all manufacturing in the nation and should not outsource jobs. And then we have the, normal answers here. So this is one where it seems like the answer is definitely going to depend on whether we're considering our current society or an ideal society. So going back through these, the government should own most industry, but should allow competition. So there's not just one choice. Since they're all government owned, they can ensure it's domestically produced. Here we're talking about nationalization. We're talking about some kind of form of mixed nationalization. Outsourcing manual labor allows our citizens to have cheap goods. No, this one's bad. Outsourcing manual labor leads to you having essentially just a service economy, and that is what is currently leading to so many of the economic problems here in the United States. So B is ultra bad. C, we should remove the minimum wage. The costs of producing here will be lower than producing abroad and shipping. That one is awful. That is absolutely idiotic, and that would lead to completely disastrous results. Removing the minimum wage would essentially just be a race to the bottom to enslave as many people in society as possible. The next one is we should regulate companies to only provide subsidies and government purchases to businesses that perform key manufacturing within the nation, not abroad. That one's interesting, kind of a wonky neoliberal solution. Only providing subsidies and government purchases to businesses to perform key manufacturing. Yeah. We should impose heavy fees on goods produced in countries with worse labor rights. Again, this is a very sort of like liberal solution. It's like, doesn't seem like the right answer. We should have national manufacturing subsidized by taxes to keep prices competitive with outsourced jobs. Buyers can decide for themselves which are better. Once again, sort of this one's sort of a mixed economic approach. The government should nationalize all manufacturing in the nation and should not outsource jobs. So this one is this is state capitalism, this last one here. So no mixture, full nationalization. This one really never lasts. There's been numerous attempts to do things like this, but it really never lasts. So that one's completely unrealistic. Unfortunately, none of these are really going to solve the broader problem because the problem of outsourcing is caused by capitalism, and all of these are capitalistic solutions. So here I would tend to choose the one that I think would be the best solution within the current paradigm. So let's see here. So probably the one that says we should have national manufacturing subsidized by taxes to keep prices competitive with outsourced jobs. Buyers can decide for themselves which are better. That one seems like it might be one of the best solutions under current conditions. Let's see here. I suppose that some form of state capitalism is probably superior to most forms of market competition. So, I think probably something like the government should own most industry, but should allow competition. So there's not just one choice. Since they're government owned, we can ensure it's all domestically produced. That one's probably would be the best of the options given here. However, I completely disagree with every part of all these philosophies. I do not think any of these are going to solve the problem. And so that's what I'm going to choose. I completely disagree with every part of these philosophies. Next. Reproductive incentives. So the first one is those with genes that the state wants should have children and have children often. And those with poor genes should not be allowed to have children at all. No, this is horrifying. This is eugenicism. This is hard eugenics. And this absolutely has a terrible track record and would not work. There's a huge number of reasons why this would not work. any sort of arbitrary controls on, preferable genetics in this very broad sense, especially those decided by the state, are going to lead to all kinds of problems in the gene pool. You're going to lead to weeding out all kinds of genetic desirable traits that you want. You're also going to lead to all kinds of constrictions of the gene pool, which is going to lead to mutations, which is going to lead to all different. It's going to produce, therefore, more diseases. It's a disastrous idea. Hard eugenics can't work. It's an impossible idea. The next one, the Earth has a limit to the population it can support, and while we should not have strict controls, we should incentivize people to limit the number of children they have. Disagreed. I think that's a bad idea. In fact, studies demonstrate that as the population of almost any species booms out of control for the environment, the population will tend to reach a maximum point and then will naturally begin to decline based on both its pressures externally, but also based on the what seem to be sort of internal natural pressures based in the species' genetic capacities. And that's exactly what we have seen with a bunch of different places where humans are. Humans will overpopulate an area, then they will begin to adjust their reproduction to the fact that they have a more constricted space, and they will produce less children. And this is a dynamic we see all over the place. In fact, people are all over the place on Earth right now talking about declining birth rates. Well, this isn't just a complete boogeyman. It does exist. Like, that is something that is happening. There are declining birth rates in a bunch of places, and that's good. It's happening naturally. It's not being forced by the state. It's happening because of natural ecological limits. And that's what we should desire to see, is that when people are placed in ecologically devastating circumstances where we are overpopulating the niche, that we should naturally produce less babies. So that would be my answer. And let's see if it's contained in any of these. Third one, population limiting incentives would only hurt the poor, as the rich will not care about the incentives. We should offer financial support to the poor to ensure our youth are able to have their needs met growing up, but not enough to be considered an incentive. Once again, don't think there really needs to be an incentive. We should encourage our native citizens to have more children by offering tax incentives to ensure they can support our economy, blah, 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 unneeded. We need to keep our population in check, but incentives will not stop the rich, so we should have a hard limit on the number of children. Nope, absolutely not. People should have as many children as they want. That is not the business state. Yeah, precisely so. We don't need to have any incentives or disincentives about people having children. All of our science suggests that, in fact, as populations proceed toward the limits of their container, that they just slow their birth rates, and that is exactly what we are currently seeing in the world population. Maybe not fast enough for the ecology's sake, but that is just what's already naturally happening. Next one, representatives. So the first one says, I want a representative who will bring stability and strength through a lifelong rule. Absolutely not. That's monarchy, and that just leads to all kinds of disastrous outcomes. All of human history attests to the disastrousness of that system. I want a leader who will represent the popular opinion of the area they serve, even when they personally disagree. Right, so this is representative democracy, right? This is what we see in the Republic. Next one is, I want leaders who are experts in various fields and can use that knowledge to create well-informed policy. So this is technocracy. This doesn't usually end up happening. There's not really any examples, governmental examples I can think of where this has happened. And that's because that's not really feasible. It's not really feasible. In a democracy, the people are supposed to be making the decisions, not experts deciding for them. So maybe they could create legislation which could be presented to others. That would be good. And then the people could vote on it. But absolutely, technocracy is not a good idea. Next one is, I want a leader who has served in the military and worked their way up the ranks. Yeah, that's idiotic. Completely outdated medieval stuff. I do not want representation. I want to be able to directly vote on most issues as referenda. I mean, this one definitely sounds the best of the options so far. The next one says, I do not want representation. I want the government to be abolished. So this sounds like they're trying to offer an anarchist perspective here. It's not entirely clear to me, of course, what the writers of this quiz mean by government, however. Next one says, I want a representative who I can bribe to get my legislative agenda prioritized. Okay, so kleptocracy. And then we have the usual responses. So this is interesting because it can be kind of difficult when selecting answers to a question like this to figure out, which one is going to better actually represent my ideas. Whether it's the one that says, I want to be able to vote directly on most issues as referenda, and the one that says, I want the government to be abolished. It's my impression that the people who are creating this test have probably made the one that says I want the government to be abolished to be a representation of anarchist politics. And so I'm probably just going to choose that one because, as I understand it, that is them trying to represent anarchist politics. And by government, they mean the state. They probably don't understand the distinction between the state and government, or really the long dialogue that has been had by anarchists on the meaning of the word government or the meaning of the word state. So I'm going to take this to mean that they think that, that the state should be abolished, and that is my position. The other one, I want to be able to directly vote on most issues as referenda. It sounds like what they're saying is the state would continue to exist. There would just be a ton of direct democracy, and that is not my position. So the one that best represents my position is I do not want representation. I want the government to be abolished. Next one is whistleblowers. First response is whistleblowers should make reports through the proper channels for ethical concerns. If someone is found to have leaked classified information, they should be punished. Yeah, I absolutely disagree with that. Don't really care if it's classified information, especially within the state as it stands. Second one, anyone leaking state secrets must be punished. The people the state trusts to handle its secrets should not have the authority to determine whether the state is right or wrong. Yeah, absolutely incorrect. Idiotic. Third one, whistleblowers who are revealing information that the people have a right to know, such as illegal activities the government did, should be protected and regarded as heroes. Yeah, I mean, that's absolutely the case. Next one is there should be no classified information, and as such, there's no issue with whistleblowers. I would say in a future system that was managed by the people, I would think that forms of secrecy could be valuable. But in this current system, I don't really trust this system to determine what should and should not be secret. So I would say within the current system, there should be no classified information. This system is completely untrustworthy, that hierarchical power structures are completely untrustworthy, and they should therefore not be allowed to keep anything classified because their determination of what should be kept classified is what protects the state, not what protects the people. So I would say that is my answer. However, the more moderate answer is the, people who are revealing information that the people have a right to know, such as illegal activities. Yeah, I mean, that one's kind of weird because it just presumes that, every time that the whistleblowers blow the whistle, that it is information that people have a right to know and that the government can determine that. I don't think that one really matches my beliefs. Maybe it matched my beliefs in my early 20s or something, but yeah, there should be no classified information. The state is completely untrustworthy, and so there's no issue with whistleblowers. Next one is highways. First option says we should have many highways be public, but allow private highways to be built to compete. If their quality or placement allows them to be profitable because people choose them, that's a positive for everyone. Absolutely not. As someone who has seen how turnpikes work and seen the way that you end up having to pay for efficient transportation, private highways are completely useless. Or rather, not completely useless, but they are a very poor solution to the problem. Next one is highways should be operated by the national government. This ensures we can guarantee road quality nationwide that is free for everyone and should employ a lot of people to work on ensuring top quality. If the state continues to exist, yes. This is the one I would choose if the state is continuing to exist. The next one would be local governments should build and maintain highways. This ensures they are responsive to the wishes of local communities and their wishes. Depending on what they mean by government here, I could possibly agree if they would consider an anarchist, federation of councils to be a government, then I would agree with this one. But I don't think that's what they mean. I think they're talking about kind of like this states' rights stuff. They're talking about like, can Oklahoma build and maintain its highways? And that just doesn't seem like it's been a good solution so far. Oklahoma has terrible highways, by the way. Next one is roads should be privatized. Private highways ensure that only those who use them pay for them and will create better quality. Absolutely not. Once again, turnpikes are disastrous. They end up having much lower usage. So you have these big immaculate highways that much fewer people actually use. No, absolutely not. I would prefer there were zero turnpikes, that there were zero toll roads. I think that is in every way deleterious to human society. So this one is weird because there's not really an anarchist answer on this one, right? There's not really an anarchist answer on quite a few of these. Let's see here. See, this one's weird because I guess the one that's closest to what I think is local governments should build and maintain highways, because like that is, if you consider like an anarchist society to be governance, then that is basically what I would say. However, it's weird because it seems like by answering that, I might be giving this test the vibe that I am, what is it? States' rights, localism kind of person. And that is not the case, but I'll answer it because it's the closest to what's going on. I would say, which sucks because in the current system, I would say it's the second one. Highways should be operated by the national government. This ensures we can guarantee road quality nationwide that is free for everyone, and it should employ a lot of people to work on ensuring top quality. Insofar as that we have the current society, that's the one I believe. So this is a very weird question. I find this very ambiguous what either of these answers would entail. I don't really know what to put here. This one's kind of weird to me. I'm going to put the one about local governments, but I feel weird about doing it because I don't feel that way within the current society. Next one is consumer goods production. First says, anyone should be able to start a government-backed company that can produce competing consumer goods. Sure, state capitalism, essentially. The government should regulate consumer goods to ensure safety and compliance with standards, but not produce them. Right, so a regular liberal capitalism. The government should produce consumer goods to ensure an affordable price. However, the free market should be able to compete with it. Sort of mixed system, a mixed sort of social, state capitalist and traditional capitalist system. Next one is government-owned industry should manufacture all consumer goods for the population. Very rarely has this ever happened. It doesn't usually work out super hot, and usually the economy liberalizes. The nation should guarantee consumer goods to meet everyone's needs, provided by those who are able to make them without any sort of currency. Let's see. The nation should guarantee consumer goods to meet everyone's needs, provided those who are able to make them without any sort of currency. Sure. Interesting. Okay. Sort of baseline production with that one. The next one, the government should not be producing consumer goods. That is for the markets to produce. Right. And so the sort of ANCAP perspective. Here's another one that doesn't really have an anarchist answer. Right. I would say, this one, we're pretty much just answering this question based on current conditions. But I think that the one that has the best overlap is, okay, without any sort of currency. Yeah, I guess that's the closest. The nation should guarantee consumer goods to meet everyone's needs, provided by those who are able to make them without any sort of currency. I think they're trying to talk, I think that's their attempt at communism for this question. So that's what I'll answer. The next one is concentration of power. So the first one is power should be distributed to everyone through a large legislative body with enough people to represent the views of each person. Politicians are important to be able to spend their full time understanding issues, listening to experts, and evaluating the big picture. All right. So this is essentially a representative democracy. Next one. Only those who have served in the military and potentially risked their life for the nation can be fully trusted with the nation's interests, and only those who have served it should thus be given a voice and power. Yeah, this is just nonsense. The fact that a person would have to be in the military to have an opinion on how their nation functions is absurd. Absolutely logically fallacious, zero grounding. Third one, power must be decentralized to everyone, with important decisions ultimately decided through frequent national referenda. People generally know what they want and are able to understand issues with a little explanation. Here's another one that is kind of, direct democracy, but it is not entirely clear what the role of the state is. It looks like here we still have a state. We have a state with direct democracy. Fourth one, we should distribute power by region in the nation, with representatives from each region deciding national policy, but also leaving many issues to the region themselves to decide locally. Yeah, so this one is, I don't know, this one is also just sounds like a sort of representative government, a representative democracy of sorts. So yeah, this one reminds me a lot of the federalism of the United States. The next one, nobody should have the power to make laws. People should have the freedom to decide for themselves what is wrong and what is justified. See, this one sounds like that it's trying to be anarchism, but I wonder what it means by laws, of course, right? If it means by laws imposing the will of a sort of legislative body down upon the people, then sure, right. I would say, that there should not be specific people that are making laws that everyone else has to follow. People should have the freedom to decide for themselves what is wrong and what is justified, and that is what a bottom-up form of self-governance would look like. So that one sounds like it's supposed to be the anarchist answer, but it's not clear to me what the authors of this test think that means. The next one, we need a single leader above all who can serve for life and be able to fully understand the big picture. Without worrying about what the public thinks, the leader can make the best decisions for the nation as a whole. And see, this one's funny. Without worrying about what the public thinks, the leader can make the best decisions for the nation as a whole. How would the leader know better than the people what is going to be better for the nation as a whole? The nation is the people, right? So like this idea that somehow a dictator would see more clearly than the people is absurd. In fact, studies demonstrate otherwise, that people in positions of concentrated power make decisions that are more out of touch with what the nation needs. In fact, James C. Scott basically demonstrates to us that as power gets more concentrated, information is more and more corrupted as it finally arrives to the person with dictatorial power. So no, actually, a person in a position of dictatorship is actually very, very poorly equipped to answer national questions. The next one, power should be concentrated according to wealth. So this one's already capitalism, huh? Citizens who are wealthier have a bigger stake in the nation and in most cases understand both a specialization, how people think, and what they want, which allowed them to become wealthy. Yeah, this one's the mythology of capitalism. This is what capitalism convinces itself is true and good. The problem is that, of course, yes, power is concentrated according to wealth. That's capitalism. But citizens who are wealthier do not have a bigger stake in the nation. They have the same stake as everyone else. They might risk more because the nation failing means that they might fail, but even that isn't necessarily true in the era of cosmopolitanism and you have these corporations that are essentially multinational corporations. They don't even have a larger stake in the nation at this point. And they don't also necessarily have a specialization. They don't necessarily understand how people think or what they want. And that's not what allowed them to become wealthy. So yeah, no, premise of the question is completely false. Then the next one, or of that answer, the next one is policy should not be set by politicians, but by experts in each field who are able to actually understand the issues, something that politicians will never truly be able to do. Once again, this one's technocracy. Technocracy generally doesn't even come into existence, but insofar as it did, it wouldn't be good. It would be good if experts were to create proposals, which people could decide upon. That's a good thing, but they should be delegated. They should not be put into positions of power beforehand. They shouldn't have those positions of power by structural fiat. If there are experts that are making proposals for us, they should be in that position by delegation. So let's see here. And that is not to say that they get to make those decisions either. They take those proposals to us and we make the decisions along with those experts. Unlike this here that says that the policy would be set completely by experts. That is not ideal. Because once again, just because they're experts doesn't mean that they actually know what it's like to be the people. Just because you're an expert doesn't mean you have like a direct experience on the ground to know what it is like to be the average person. It's possible that your agglomeration of statistical data does not give you the correct view of the world, that it is partially a view of the world. It is one way to look at the world that can indeed give you very useful information, but statistical agglomerations themselves do not produce perfectly accurate truths about what it is to live as the people within society. And so when you give these technocrats too much power, what you do is, like with every other hierarchical power structure, you make them more and more removed from the experiences of the people and therefore less able to make decisions which are actually good for the people that are living in society. So let's see here. Nobody should. So I'll choose the anarchist answer, even though I'm not sure what they actually necessarily mean by laws. If by laws they just mean rules, well, yeah, we should all be part of coming together to make rules. And people should have the freedom to decide for themselves. Agreed. But that should be a structured and deliberative process together. I don't think that it should just be that everyone does as thou wilt. That is to say that, an anarchist society is not structureless. It is a society where structure is determined from the bottom up by the people and that their consent can be withdrawn from that structure anytime they please. So I don't know if that's in line with what they mean by this answer, but it is the answer that it still at least represents my viewpoint. Next, agreements between allies to prevent border checks between them. Then here, the first one says, I support this, not just with our allies, but with all nations. People should be free to enter any nation. I mean, this one's pretty much just going to be my answer, but we'll keep reading the rest of them. Second, with this agreement, our people can easily vacation to our allies if they choose with negligible additional risks. So I support this. The next one. This agreement is a win for everyone and can make it possible for closer alliances between our people. So just to remind everybody, this is talking about making agreements with allies to prevent border checks. So continuing on, we should not allow people to leave the nation. As such, I am opposed to this. Wow. Yeah, that's some North Korea stuff there. Next one, I oppose this, actually, as we should not be having people from other nations in our nation at all. Wow, so there's some ethno-nationalist stuff. Next one, it is important that we can examine who is coming into our nation. We cannot control who enters those nations, which is unacceptable. Okay, that one seems like it's out of place, kind of just talking about border policy, but it doesn't seem like it really fits the discussion. So the very first one. Next one is gun ownership. So the first says, civilians should not be permitted to own a gun. It endangers law enforcement officers and makes crime more difficult to stop. All right, next is gun ownership should be encouraged, if not required, to deter criminals who will have to put their life at risk when committing a crime. Yeah, so the first one is wrong insofar as that civilians should absolutely be permitted to own a gun because their state is an illegitimate ruling structure. So they need the gun in case that the people are finally ever able to muster the capability to overthrow their government. But also this idea that it endangers law enforcement officers. Well, it doesn't look like our law enforcement officers are really in much danger. They're actually not a very dangerous profession here in the United States. So that is a very bad justification. Next one was the one that says that it deters criminals who will have to put their life at risk. That is not what statistics show. The more that people are armed, the more homicides go up, the more suicides go up. And also you have the problem that when people open carry guns, it actually leads to more incidences of violence, not less. So the second one is also incorrect. Third one, anyone should be able to own a gun and be able to use it when they feel threatened. That one I mostly agree with. I think that maybe there could be restrictions on who could own a gun, but I think it'll probably be the third one. Fourth, many gun deaths are caused by lack of proper training. Yeah, I agree with that. There should be restrictions on purchasing a gun, including training requirements and background checks to ensure gun owners are responsible. In our current society, yeah, that's probably the right answer. The next one is those who can demonstrate a need to own a gun should be able to get one. However, those without a need should not be able to. Everyone has a need when the state exists, because the state may need to be overthrown. So that one is invalid. So my answer would be anyone should be able to own a gun and be able to use it when they feel threatened. It's unfortunate that could lead to all kinds of negative outcomes. But in a liberated society, that would absolutely be the case so that we can defend ourselves from outside aggressors. The one that I would answer if we were talking about in our current society would be that people need just to have training. We just need people to be responsible. If they're going to have a gun, they should have to demonstrate that they can be responsible with a gun. That's the way it should work in a sort of liberal society. However, I'm going to answer the third one, that anyone should be able to own a gun and be able to use it when they feel threatened. Next one is religious bake. So it's a scenario. A religious baker refuses to make a gay marriage cake. So this one happened in the United States, and it led to a whole court case and everything. So the first one says, this is unacceptable discrimination and homophobia. This man should not be in business. Yeah, well, I mean, I absolutely agree with that. Next one is, unless they were asking him to draw a graphic image depicting homosexuality, he should not have a problem with it. If it's just writing their names in something like a pride flag, it's discrimination to refuse the request. Yes, I would agree. Third one, people should never be mandated to do anything. He should be able to deny services to anyone for any reason. They can get one elsewhere. Absolutely not. That is the logic of, apartheid. That's the logic of segregation. That's the logic of all kinds of, racist store owners and stuff back in the day denying black people the right to come into their establishment and use their services. So absolutely not. The fourth one, the baker is being asked to make something against his religion. Okay, he should have no obligation to create something celebrating that. That's absurd. Anybody can claim something is against their religion. Somebody could just make up a religion that believes anything. Not killing people is against my religion. It doesn't matter. I'm sorry. You live in a civil society. If your religion asks you to do things which are harmful to that civil society, your religion's the one that's got to go, not the civil society. Next one, the couple should be arrested. They should be pairing with someone who they can produce babies with. Wow. Yeah. Okay. So the fascist answer is in there. It's unacceptable discrimination and homophobia, and he shouldn't even be in business. That's my perspective. I'd say if you can, just bully him out of business. Just bankrupt his company if you can. I think that if somebody's a homophobe, they should never say it out loud. They should essentially be afraid of repercussions for expressing homophobia. That's my position. Now, should the government stop them from doing so? I don't know. That's a different question. But I would say the part about the refusing to make a gay marriage cake, yeah, that's discrimination. There should be laws against that in a liberal society. And in an anarchist society, we would hope to essentially exclude him from federations. We would want to make that business, if there is any kind of business, if we're talking about something like a transitionary stage, we would hope to see that business be completely non-functional, and for it to get essentially no relations with any other federations, and to therefore become completely non-functional. That would be the ideal. The next one, taxation of religious buildings. Religious buildings should be taxed, as the state should not be giving religion special privileges over businesses. Yeah, absolutely. Insofar as that we live in a liberal democracy, religious buildings should be taxed. Churches should be taxed. There should be no exemptions for them from taxation. The next one, the state should exempt all religious buildings from taxation as long as it's exempting those of all religions. No, absolutely not. I don't see any reason why religious organizations deserve to be exempt from the taxes that everybody else is paying. The third one, religious buildings should be banned. No, that's absurd. The fourth one, religious buildings should receive state funding to ensure they are able to stay open. Absolutely not. Sorry, it's just You know, if your religion doesn't have enough devout followers to continue, then it shouldn't have buildings. It should die under its own merits, I guess you might say, or it would, you know, it should cease to exist of its own lack of merit. That's a better way to say it. And then the last one is I completely disagree. Yeah. So yeah, insofar as the current society that we live in, religious buildings should be taxed. And the state shouldn't be giving religion special privileges over everyone else. Next one, international currency. Our historical currency is a part of our national identity. We cannot give that up for a slight ease of transactions with foreigners. Wow, this is some real outdated stuff. Yeah, no, absolutely ridiculous. That just seems like a, you know, suicidal measure. Bad idea. You should, your currency is literally just a way for you to do transactions with people. In fact, currency really only came into existence as a way to do transaction with foreigners. That's exactly how it came into existence. Insofar as we're talking about the rising of the market and village communities, doing business with other people. You know, the market really came about as a way to do business with foreigners. So no, that's doesn't make any sense at all. Next, sharing a currency with neighboring nations increases our currency stability and gives it more weight internationally, right? So here they're kind of like hearkening to the euro. The third one, I support sharing a currency with our neighbors, as it will simplify life for everyone in the shared currency zone and make international commerce easier. Sure, okay. Once again, we're talking about the euro here. The government should not be regulating currency. People should be free to choose what they accept as pay, such as cryptocurrency, material goods, or the currency of another nation if they believe that has value. Yeah, I mean, I'm not like against the idea of people being able to use whatever currency they want. I just think it's a silly argument to say that the reason why there shouldn't be a shared currency with other nations is because we have a historical connection. It's part of our national identity. That's absurd. That is not a good reason to maintain a currency. Next, having the ability to print our own currency when we need to stimulate our economy is valuable to our nation and is worth more than the benefits of a shared currency. That's at least rational. I mean, there's an argument involved there. The next, I support using a shared currency with neighboring nations. It allows our people and theirs to easily travel to each other and eases transactions. Once again, we got some kind of arguments that seem similar to like the euro here. Then last one, I'm opposed to sharing a currency with other nations. We need to be able to make decisions about our currency internally, and foreigners should not have a say in that. Yeah, this is the brain dead position of nationalists, of ethno-nationalists. This sort of like lack of thinking about complex subjects, or the inability to think complexly about the world or to understand the root mechanics of how things function. So this one is weird because I don't really think there's like some kind of like specifically anarchist position being represented among these options here. Having the ability to print our own currency when we need stimulates our economy and valuable to the nation. I mean, I guess sharing a currency with our neighbors, I would say if we could just have a single currency for the whole planet, that would be fine. I just don't care, you know? But also I don't really care if the government regulates currency very much. This one I just don't have a strong opinion on. I mean, I think some of these positions are really stupid positions, like the idea that your currency is quote unquote part of your national identity. That's silly. It's a currency, you know, like your national identity is determined by your culture. Oh, sorry. The kitty wants to hang out with me while I'm doing this. Is he on the camera? Oh yeah, he barely is on camera. See, he's just sitting in my lap here. He's just being a baby. He's been hanging out with me. Okay, anyway. So, back to this. Yeah, I'd say the government doesn't have to regulate currency. I mean, if a government decides to keep a single currency with a neighbor, fine. If it decides to keep its own currency, fine. That's just not important to me, so I'll just choose that one. Genetic engineering. Genetic engineering poses a major threat of allowing the super rich to have inhumanly perfect babies who can outperform the poor, furthering societal class gaps, which should be banned, except in cases of life or death. Wow. Okay, well, sure, maybe. The next one, human genetics should not be something we alter. Unless there's certain death for the person in question without genetic modification, we should avoid it. No, disagree. The third one, the government should not stand in the way of genetic engineering. Those who wish to create better children using technology should be allowed to. Maybe. The fourth one, genetic engineering should not only be allowed, but required. We should modify infants to be perfect at exactly what we need and plan their lives so they can integrate perfectly with society without questioning their place. No, that is hard eugenics. That is very, very bad. That is disastrous. And then the next one, we should use genetic modification for good, such as eradicating diseases and correcting genetic defects, but should leave most traits to genetics. Yeah, that's pretty much what I think. I think that, you still have kind of a slippery slope there. It's like, who gets to determine, what is a disease or a genetic defect? I would hope to see scientists being the ones to determine the answer to that question, but I can definitely see how it could go wrong. But as somebody who grew up with a sibling who had a debilitating muscular wasting disease, I really just cannot accept the position that we would do, if we had the capability, that we would not prevent someone from being born with a disease such as that one. It's not okay to me to say that we are so afraid of genetic engineering that we would doom children to spending decades slowly dying within their bodies as their muscles waste away. I just do not think that is an acceptable loss in order to have this ideal of zero genetic engineering. I think that there are numerous good examples of when we would use genetic engineering, but I definitely can see in some of these questions how it can go way too far. I think this is an open and nuanced subject, but there are certainly diseases for which that it is not neutral. This is not just like, oh, this person may have chosen not to have or to have this. Nobody would choose to have muscular dystrophy if given the chance. Everybody would press the button to get rid of it. So there are certain genetic diseases which should absolutely just be removed from any potentially viable child who's going to be born. The next one is surveillance. The government shouldn't be allowed to look at most communications, but software should automatically flag potentially illegal activities for review and potential reporting to authorities. Obviously, I don't agree with this. Second one, people should have a right to privacy in their communications. The government should not be able to get electronic data. Yeah, that's pretty much my position. Next one, the company should be permitted to monitor your communications and ensure that you are following all their terms, but the government, if one even exists, should not be allowed to. This one's kind of weird because it's like, ensure that you are following all their terms. I mean, I guess that's true of any situation where if you're like within some structure, you would, be expected to, if you consented to that structure, you would be expected to follow the rules that you consented to. But that's not, I wouldn't say I trust companies any more than I trust the government to do well with that information. The fourth one, people should have a reasonable expectation of privacy in their data, but the government should be allowed to gain access to the private communications of certain people if they have reasonable cause to apply for a warrant. I think that's the one that would be like reasonable within the current liberal republic, or I think a lot of liberals would take a position like that. But I think that we've already seen that they're going to abuse that. They have no conception of their own limits. The state the state is a structure of hubris. It can never conceive its own limits. It will always try to expand its boundaries and do more damage to the lives of its people. So, no. The next one, the government should be able to access the communications of anyone. This should be used to discourage people from engaging in illegal activities online. No, absolutely not. No, we do not want a dystopian dictatorship. So yeah, people should have a right to privacy in their communications. Government should not be able to get electronic data. Next, abortion. You should have full control over your body, including the right to have an abortion. That will be my answer. Let's see what else we got. If the state approves you to have a baby, you should have it unless the mother's life is in danger. People who are not approved to have babies should have abortions mandated, however, and face strict penalties. Right. The fascist answer needs to be in there. Third one, bans on abortions primarily hurt the poor and often leave single mothers stuck in poverty with a baby. Abortion should be legal for everyone. Sure. I'm not sure what the difference between the first and the third one is, but anyway. The fourth one, the right to life is a fundamental right, and abortion should be banned in nearly all occasions. Right, so here we have the conservative bordering on fascist position. The next one, abortion should be legal but rare. People should be educated of alternate methods of contraception, and there should be restrictions on late-term abortions without a reason. Well, I mean, I do agree that people should be educated of alternate methods of contraception. Like, that's all well and good. You know, I mean, we would prefer a situation where, you know, where no abortions were necessary if they could all be prevented by, you know, within a person's consent. You know, them having some form of contraception or some form of plan B, et cetera, those things would, you know, be preferred. But it's just weird that it kind of includes that caveat in the answer. The right to life. Oh, yeah. So I would say the first one, you should have full control over your body, including the right to an abortion. The next one, banks crashing that will damage the economy. So that's the scenario. The bank is crashing and it will damage the economy. So we're looking at a 2008 financial crisis sort of thing. First answer, the issue is that we have private mega banks. We should instead have local government-owned community banks that work in the interests of the communities they represent and fund businesses in the area. I mean, yeah, insofar as you have a liberal republic, that's preferable. Next, we have banks should not exist in any form. Well, imagine this is maybe like the communist answer. It's kind of hard to tell. I mean, banks have existed, and I mean, that one's weird. This one's weird. Banks should not exist in any form. I'm not sure. I'm not sure what that really means, to be honest. There have been banks even back into ancient medieval societies, you know, societies back into antiquity and so on. 3, we must not interfere with the free markets. Ooh, the free markets. It will fail and eventually the economy will rebuild itself. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of true. I don't know about the must not interfere with free markets part, but 4, we should break up the big banks before they get to a situation where a crash like this can be caused by one company. Yes, that is absolutely the case. Next one, we should purchase this bank and run it as a national bank. Other banks can compete with us, but we can't. But we can guarantee we won't go bankrupt. Yeah, that's probably one of the best answers. Next one, we should create a single national government-owned bank and buy all the current banks, including the one that is failing. This ensures everyone can pay the same rates and that we can take on the debt the failing one owes. I would be in support of that. I personally don't really see banks as very like valuable entities, even in a liberal representative economy. I think that it would probably be better for the banks to just be a single national bank. But insofar as we're kind of talking about like what the best practical solution is, it's probably just you break up all the big banks and you buy out any bank that is failing. Essentially, and I don't mean you bail it out. I mean, you literally own the bank. You nationalize it. So if the bank goes under and it would collapse the economy, or really if it would do damage to the economy, you just nationalize the bank. I think that would be the answer to the question. But also you should break up big banks before they do that. I just don't think that banks should be allowed to get that big that they can do that kind of damage to the economy. And then one of them is, we should bail out the bank to save the economy, but eventually have the bank pay back the money. So that's essentially what the United States did in 2008. The one that like banks should not exist in any form is kind of a weird one. I think that's them trying to be anarchist or communist, but I'm not sure I entirely understand what they're getting at here, that the bank should not exist in any form. Very, very peculiar. Yeah, this is a weird one. Because like, I would say that like 2 of the answers are correct within our current economy. Banks should not exist in any form. I don't know. Maybe I should interpret that as communism. I guess I'll just say that one because I think it's supposed to be communism. Next one, religious holidays. The state should not make religious holidays national holidays and instead have more holidays around dates that are significant to the nation, like an election day, or to emphasize relaxation rather than religious observation. Personally, do not care. So I might actually literally just choose do not care about this issue. We'll find out. The government should guarantee the most holy holidays of all major religions in the nation off so that all of those religions can perform their religious duties. Yeah, actually, I mean, I think that one's the most humane. That's the most humane. Religious holidays in the most popular religion in the nation should also be... I don't care about if it's most popular. I mean, I guess insofar as we're talking about our current society, the most humane thing to do is that all of the holy days of all the major religions could be national holidays. I don't see any issue with that. That one's fine. Next one, flag burning. It should be mandatory to support the nation, and as such, damaging a flag should be very illegal. No, absolutely not. 2, a flag is a symbol of our nation. To destroy a flag is a hostile act against the nation and should be illegal. No, absolutely not. Third one, I support the right to protest and destroy flags, but flag burning should be regulated for safety to ensure that it does not pose a danger to people or property through the smoke or fire. Oh yeah, wow, truly so dangerous. 4, the nation has major issues, and the only way to get them addressed is to draw attention. Flag burning is fairly harmless, but gets attention, so it's a good protest method. Yeah, I mean, sure. This should be a free country, and if you own a flag, you should be free to burn it if that's what you want to do. I mean, that's, yeah, like, yes, but also just like, who cares? It's just a piece of cloth. It reminds me of all these people who say stupid shit like, somebody died for that flag. No, they didn't. Nobody's ever died for a flag, or maybe some like really hilarious, stupid situation happened where somebody died for a flag. Nobody has ever probably died for a flag. People die for their nations, but the flag is not the nation. The flag is a piece of cloth. People do not die for flags. Furthermore, even if they did, I just think that was tragic. That'd just be sad. I wouldn't really think to myself, oh, wow, they died for this piece of cloth. Or rather, a copy of this piece of cloth. Now I really care. I don't care. It's absurd, even on its face in a liberal democracy. Who gives a shit? It's a piece of cloth. Yeah, I mean, this one's weird. I mean, I guess I would say the one about protesting here. Except for the part where it says you have to ensure it does not pose a danger to people or property. Who cares? All right, next one. Minimum wage. First, all companies should be required to split their profits fairly throughout their employees. Anyone in charge of the company should not be allowed to be paid significantly more than those at the bottom of the company. Sure. The next one, the majority of working people should be paid the value of their labor with a minimum, a comfortable living wage. There should also be a maximum wage, and managers and executives should be paid a lot less. That one probably will end up being what I say. We'll see. People should produce as they can and consume what they need. The concept of... There we go. Okay, that's what I'll be answering. Communism. So just rereading that, sorry. People should produce as they can and consume what they need. The concept of money should not exist. Right. So they actually gave us the communist answer. Thank you. But once again, like, it kind of depends on whether we're talking about, like, right now we're in an ideal society. So we're kind of back to that problem. Like right now, insofar as like what should happen in a sort of transition, well, then working people should be paid the value of their labor, and there should be a maximum wage where managers and executives are paid less. That's what should happen. But insofar as we're talking about an ideal society, people should produce as they can and consume what they need, and the concept of money shouldn't exist. The next one, though, there should be a national program that guarantees a job with a wage that people can live comfortably on, working on things such as better infrastructure. Companies that pay less than that will have trouble finding workers to fill their openings. No. Next one, workers should have a minimum wage to prevent a race to the bottom, but executives develop ideas for their business and take risks in founding it, and thus deserve a large portion of their company's profit. No, idiotic. That just doesn't work. We've already seen that it doesn't work. It works, of course, in impoverishing everyone. It works super good for the executives getting paid a lot of money, but it does not work super hot for the workers. Let's see here. I mean, that's really just them laying out capitalism. There should be a minimum wage, but executives should be the ones who really benefit most. Anyway, next, there should be no minimum wage. The markets will figure out how much labor is worth and allow us to keep prices competitive with those produced with labor abroad. It's funny that just even reading the phrase, the markets will figure out how much labor is worth. You know how much I think that the owners of industry think labor is worth? $0. I think they think it's worth literally nothing. They think that it is worth however much that the most impoverished and enslaved and miserable worker would take for their work. That's it. That's the amount that they think labor is worth. If they could, they would just have slaves. Corporations do not care about you. They do not care about how much you make. They do not care if you do well or are happy or can buy products. They would happily shoot themselves in the foot and destroy the entire economy if it meant them making an extra buck. That's capitalism in a nutshell. Next, there should be a moderate living wage that won't put small businesses out of business, as well as taxes on large companies with many workers below the poverty line to pay for any welfare their employees receive and ensure small businesses are competitive. So just the regular old liberal solution. Next, people should be guaranteed a living wage from their jobs. They should be able to work a single job with reasonable hours and be guaranteed enough to afford everything they need. So social democracy of a sort. So yeah, I answer the communist one. People should produce as they can and consume what they need. The concept of money should not exist. Next, minority group making language official where spoken a lot. Okay, so it is important for our nation to have a single national official language. These people should be expected to learn and understand the national language. No, I disagree. Next, this will cause undue burden to our industries in labeling everything for all languages for all localities. We should have one national language. No, absolutely just silly. That's not necessary. Next, people who do not speak our language should be deported. There is no reason for another language. The fascist answers are always so absurd. It's just like delusional. This is the reason why fascism doesn't work on a long timeline. It always fails because it's just so delusional. They are not connected to reality at all. Next, we should add it as an additional language in that locality, as it can make life significantly easier for these people. Yeah, I mean, that seems easy. I don't know. So I guess we should add as an additional language in the locality. Sure. Next. Elections. There shouldn't be a government to even vote to put people in. Okay. So here, I guess what they're saying is that a government is a state. So for them, the government and the state are the same. So when I answered way back about the government shouldn't exist, they meant the state. So I think we're good on that. A vote is a vote and all votes should count exactly the same. Sure. Those who serve the country through military should have more of a say in government than those who do not. Once again, this is just completely outdated. This has no connection to a modern society. Every person must have a vote, but it should be weighted geographically for at least one chamber of the legislature to ensure one region cannot blah, blah, blah. Anyway, modern democratic republic, or representative democracy, I should say. The vote of an educated person should be worth more than that of a fool. Well, good luck figuring out how to judge that, how you measure that. Good luck. Good luck on that one. Next, those who put more money into the government deserve to get more out of their vote. So you just bribe your way into having more power over society? Wow, that sounds like phenomenal. That's going to work out great. Next, voting is really an unnecessary process. The whims of the masses are irrelevant. So advocating for dictatorship here. We've already talked about why that doesn't work. So there shouldn't even be a government to vote to put people in. There we go. Next, we have when military action should be used. 1, we should use our military to assault and annex territory that should belong to us. So imperialism. 2, we should not have a military. Well, that sounds ideal, but that doesn't seem to work out usually. 3, we should use our military to ensure the well-being and freedom of people around the world, such as contributing to international peacekeeping missions and efforts to replace governments that fail to respect human rights. Oh, so American-style imperialism, or rather what the Americans say that they are, the claim of the United States as to its role across the planet. Next one, the state of other nations should not concern us. So any military we maintain should be for self-defense only. I don't really agree with the first part, but I agree with the second part. If any military we have should be for self-defense. Next one, our military should defend our interests abroad to ensure we remain an influential presence, such as by overthrowing hostile governments. So there's the reality of the American military. You know, the previous one was what they claim, and this is the reality of how they think. Then we've got, we should primarily use our military to ensure our nation maintains its status and independence, such as by defending allies and ensuring other nations do not try to take our land or water. Right. Next, we should use our military as a deterrent to ensure we are not attacked, as every time we enter a war, we are putting our citizens' lives on the line. So what I put here is the state of other nations should not concern us. So any military we maintain should be for self-defense only. But I understand that, the sort of utopian answer is to say we should not have a military. However, that is a far future society. That is not even a society we're going to see soon. Right? Like, we could have a society where, our geopolitical bloc is a large portion of the planet, to the degree where we are a dominant portion of the planet. And we would still have to have a military, because you are just going to be under attack by your enemies if you are counter-hegemonic. That is just how it works. So ideally, yes, in a sort of perfect society, we would have no military, or rather a society where there were no geopolitical opponents. Yes, we would not have a military. But insofar as that just being sheerly practical and recognizing that that's probably not going to be happening for centuries, then I would say the state of other nations shouldn't concern us. Any military we maintain should be for self-defense. That's my personal position. Free speech. You should have the freedom to say anything. It's not illegal until you actually take an illegal action based on the speech. Speech should be free, but you should not be guaranteed protection from backlash, including being removed from platforms if your opinion are unwelcome there. Yeah, within the current liberal republic, that's basically correct. Next, we should ban and penalize very offensive language such as slurs. These should be penalized through fines online and deplatforming. That one's weird. It's kind of mixed there, because that's talking about fines and deplatforming. But deplatforming is something that people do through, pressuring organizations, whereas fines are something the state does. So that's a very peculiar answer there. It mixes two different concepts. The next, you should not have freedom of speech. The state should decide what is acceptable to say. That hasn't worked out. That led to long periods of no progress. Next, speech should generally be free if it is literal speech. However, some symbolic speech, such as destroying symbols of government or religious texts, are grossly offensive and should be banned. That's a coward's perspective. So speech should be free, but you should not be guaranteed freedom from backlash, including being removed from platforms if your opinions are unwelcome. There you go. Deaths caused by police. When a police death occurs, there should be an investigation. The officer should be punished if they did not follow policy, but if they followed a bad policy, the police should be changed. The officer should not be punished. Okay. Here's another one of those where it's like, okay, here we go. There should not be a police force. People should determine justice using their own means. I mean, it's pretty much going to be my answer there. The next one, police work dangerous, high-stress jobs and should generally have protection when they take an action that they perceive as a threat turns out to be wrong. Nope. The statistics demonstrate police do not have dangerous jobs. Their jobs might be high stress, but they are not dangerous. They are less dangerous than all kinds of other professions that would blow your mind. Next, police should be illegally allowed to kill when someone puts up any perceived resistance to the police. Yeah, this is certainly the right-wing perspective. The next one, most police should not be armed with lethal weapons, should be representative of the communities that they serve, and should be trained in de-escalation, and should be charged when they kill a member of the communities that they were supposed to protect. This is the liberal perspective. And the part about not being armed with lethal weapons certainly works better in a lot of other nations. However, it doesn't seem like, insofar as we're talking about here in the United States, it doesn't seem like they need lethal weapons to be murdering our citizens. So no, it doesn't seem like that's really going to work out so hot. If you were to take guns away from officers, they probably would murder less U.S. citizens. But boy, oh boy, we've already seen with like Derek Chauvin and all of that they'll just kill you some other way. So I put, there should not be a police force. People should determine justice using their own means. Next, the role of people in policy. The first answer says, the general population has bad opinions and the government would be better off without their opinions. Oh, yeah, that makes no sense whatsoever. The people the opinions of the general populace are the opinions of the people affected by the decisions. So if they have bad opinions, that's just nonsensical. It's nonsensical. That's just it's a logically fallacious argument. The general population, their opinions on how they should be treated are based on their existence and their desires about how they should be treated. So there's no way for those to be bad opinions about how they should be treated. Now, you might have competing opinions about how they should be treated, but the government is certainly not going to be better at making those decisions than the people themselves in processes of deliberation. Next, the next answer says people must be given a say, but government must try to avoid the tyranny of the majority by having more local representation rather than enforcing the nationwide popular opinion on the whole nation. No, I don't really think that's the case. I mean, it's agreed that there is a tyranny of the majority, but insofar as we were talking about the society that we currently have, if you were to give me a switch that I could just flip and all at once we would have a society that was ruled by direct democratic majority, like simple majority, I'd press the button instantly. You know, like, I know that when everybody hears that, they're immediately like, oh, well, what happens if the conservatives make these and those decisions? Conservatives aren't the majority. Like, even to this day, even with all the terrible things happening in the United States, still on all of these major progressive issues, the majority of people basically agree. They don't necessarily agree with like the radical left position, but that could happen in time. But they do agree with like Medicare for all, raising the minimum wage, higher taxes on the rich, you know, like all that stuff. So like conservatives wouldn't come out ahead if we did direct democracy. That's exactly why this question is worded this way. The local representation, protecting against the nationwide popular opinion. That's because Republicans know they're in the minority and their whole purpose is rigging the system so that they as a minority get to determine what everybody else gets to do. Next says, other people's opinion should not have an effect on what you are allowed to do. Absolutely not. I don't know if that's supposed to be the anarchist position, but that is not the anarchist position. Next, the population generally knows what they want, but cannot be expected to have the time to research and vote on each issue and should delegate it to representatives. No, that's just representative democracy. The wealthy tend to know what they want and have good opinions, but the poor rarely know what is good for them. Yeah, literally the exact opposite. Well, the wealthy do tend to know what they want. It's just that they want bad things. They want things that are bad for the nation, bad for other people. They're selfish. Usually the way you become very wealthy is selfishness. So no, those are not good opinions. Those are good opinions if you want to destroy your society. And that's exactly why as wealth gets concentrated, societies begin falling apart because the people who have all of that power are making decisions in their own interests. And what is in the interests of the parasite is not what is in the interests of the host. So next, the population as a collective generally can understand and make good decisions in terms of policy with a little bit of explanation to be able to decide what they want directly. Yeah, that's what I would choose probably. Yep, next. Religious statements on national memorials. 1. Religion is an important part of our nation, and most of our soldiers would want religious messages on their memorials. Yeah, don't care. We could put religious statements on national memorials, but I guess, I don't know. Yeah, no, there's a lot of people who don't have that religion, so probably not. Our national memorials should not mention God or religion, only to serve to honor the fallen. I mean, that makes sense, I guess. Next, I'm opposed to mentioning a deity that probably doesn't exist on our memorials to the real people who died for our nation. Yeah, I mean, that's absolutely my position. I don't see any reason why we're mentioning things that don't exist in order to honor people who are dead, who are real people who died. Next, there's nothing wrong with mentioning God on our memorials as long as it isn't actively promoting any particular religion. No, I would say I don't think there's any reason to mention a deity that probably doesn't exist on our memorials to the real people who died for our nation, even though that isn't my main concern, but yes. Leader selection. We should not have a single designated leader to be chosen through any method. Yeah, agreed. Leaders should be appointed by the previous leader based on merit to ensure we always have competent leadership. Previous leaders are not in any way guaranteed to have an understanding of merit to and therefore determine what is competent leadership. So that is not at all a good way to determine your leaders. Next, leaders should be chosen by the individuals with the largest stake in the nation, similar to how a corporation might choose its CEO. Oh, I think that's literally what happened in Mussolini's fascism. I'm going to pass on that. Next, leaders should mostly be hereditary, passed down through blood. That is how you get Habsburg jaws. That's how you get inbred, child brains determining how your society functions. That just did not work, and there's good reason. It just doesn't work. Hereditary rule just leads to sycophancy. It leads to incompetence. There's no reason why who you were born to should determine whether you should rule. That's just not a good determining factor. Next, leaders should be chosen democratically by the nation that they will lead. I don't think that if there are leaders, they shouldn't have structural power. That's my position. So we'll see if any of these take that into consideration. Leaders should be chosen, but not directly through popular vote. It should be weighted to ensure that the votes of all provinces count rather than just the biggest ones. Okay. Next, leaders should be chosen through military experience. Those who have proved their ability. Well, this is so weird because I'm having a hard time thinking of societies where everything was determined through military experience, yet all of these have an answer that is about military experience. Like, no, you can't vote unless you have military experience. You should be determined if you're in the position of power in the nation, whether you have military experience. People with military experience should make that. What nation did that? I'm having a really hard time thinking of an example. There are certainly nations where having military experience helps you get into positions of power, but I can't think of any nation where everything about that nation is somehow determined by if you have military experience. Like, oh, you're really high in the military, now you're president, or now you're king. Like, that's not how kings were chosen. They were chosen mostly through hereditary means. That's not even how fascists choose their leaders. It's not like Mussolini and Hitler were the most decorated veterans or something. Like, it's just weird that there's an answer like this in almost every single one of these questions. Like, what is this ideology where military experience determines everything in society? It's not, once again, it's not fascism and it's not monarchy. So I don't understand. It's just weird. Leaders should be chosen through military experience. We should not have a single designated leader to be chosen through any method. Utilities. Utilities should be regulated to ensure that systems are compatible so that multiple companies can connect to the same building. We must prosecute monopolies that do not give a choice. Okay. Next one. We should have national utility companies, but not ban private companies. If they can find a market, they can compete with the nationalized options. All right. Next, utilities will find a fair competitive price. They should not be regulated because even if only one company services an area, they have to compete because people will take them into account when choosing an area to live in. Utilities will find a fair competitive price. They should not be regulated. No. Next, utilities should be owned by local governments or communities. They will be responsive to the small group they serve and can be replaced by the community if they are not meeting the needs of the community. I mean, that's the best one so far. Utilities such as electricity and water should be nationalized. They are public goods that everyone needs. Public control allows the best quality, since in many places there is only one option. Yeah, I mean, insofar as you have like a liberal republic, they should probably be nationalized and not controlled by local governments. We're back to that same problem as in the previous question, where it's like, okay, are you talking about in an ideal society that comes after this? Or are you talking about in the current society? In the current society, you should just nationalize all the utilities. There shouldn't be any quote unquote competition. We don't need 3 people providing electricity and 5 people providing natural gas. That should just be nationalized, and whatever profits should go straight into projects that the state needs. But insofar as we're talking about an ideal society, they would be localized. You know, these would be controlled by local governments or communities. So it says or communities. This might be the anarchist answer, I suppose. Next, it is expensive for companies to set up utility infrastructure, and they should be expected to set a fair, profitable price to make up their investments in a reasonable time. Don't care about the needs of companies. Next, the government should subsidize utility companies expanding to all areas of the nation. In exchange for this assistance, companies must guarantee a fair price and other guarantees such as a certain percentage of renewable electricity. I think the most anarchist answer is utilities should be owned by local governments or communities. They will be responsive to the small group they serve. But I don't know if the test is going to consider that as like a Republican sort of answer. Because under capitalism, that is probably still good for the most part, but especially if they're not privatized. We don't want privatization here. So I don't know. This is another one of those where it's kind of weird, kind of hard to figure out what you should be putting if you are an anarchist. Next one, prayer in school. Private religious schools may have prayers if they want, but any public schools that exist should not. Yeah, I mean, I guess that seems reasonable. Next, most schools should have daily prayer. No. Third, prayer does not need a dedicated time slot in schools. Students may pray on their own time if they wish. I would agree in all occasions. Next, I support having a minute of silence in public schools in which students may pray if they choose, but will not enforce it upon anyone. Okay, so like the thing is that, you know, I grew up in schools where you had to give the Pledge of Allegiance every single day. And it was mostly just a complete distraction. It was annoying. I sat for it most of the time, even when it pissed off my teachers. You know, I can't imagine that a daily prayer is going to be much better and that it's going to be much more productive or that it's going to be less of a nuisance to the students. I just do not see any reason why there should be a daily prayer. I guess I can see if you're in a private religious school, it makes sense. I don't think that we should be dictating that a private religious school that they can't have a prayer or something. But public schools should absolutely not be forcing prayer time on students. I think that, once again, I mean, this answer of having a minute of silence, that's fine. That's fine. I can't see it being an issue just having a silence, but it just doesn't seem necessary. You don't need some special time to pray if you want to pray. That's not needed. You can just pray whenever you want. I don't know. It's such a weird issue. I guess, you know, private schools can have prayers they want, but public schools shouldn't. I guess. I don't know. I mean, I guess the minute of silence is fine, but I don't even think that should really exist in the public schools. Next, immigration. I support opening our borders to anyone who wants to immigrate. Freedom of movement is an essential human right. I mean, sounds like that'll probably be the one. Next, we must ensure that there is a need for the immigrants we let in. Those who take low-paying jobs anyone can do are taking jobs from our own citizens. However, I would support immigrants with skills where we have a shortage. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of like the basic liberal position. Next is, we can accept immigrants, but they should be expected to learn our language and culture and do their best to integrate with our people and way of life. That was the old school conservative position. These days, conservatives are just out and out fascists, so they don't even believe that anymore. Next, we need to be able to screen immigrants coming into our country and ultimately decide who enters. Those who enter unlawfully must be found and deported. Yeah, I mean, I imagine that numerous of the other positions that were mentioned here would hold that position, but anyway, we must make it easy and quick to legally immigrate into the country. Immigrants improve our nation, and we can provide many of them a much better quality of life. Sure. I mean, I guess. Next is we should close our borders and completely shut down immigration. Our nation is for our people alone. Right, just the fascist position. Next, immigrants caught breaking laws should be deported. But those who illegally enter the country should be overlooked and allowed to stay, as they work lower wages and in worse conditions than our citizens and allow us to reduce the cost of living for our citizens. This is the position many modern liberals hold. Next, we should accept and encourage talented, educated immigrants to move here. We can provide them the best of our country, and they can better our country with their talents. Yes, that's the rhetoric of the liberals. I would say I support opening our borders to anyone who wants to immigrate. Freedom of movement is an essential human right. Next, foreign aid. Any government should be minimal if it exists at all, and thus not have the funds to be paying money abroad. This one's weird because it's like, is that the anarchist answer? because like, if in an anarchist society, if we had federations of council structures, you know, they would have money to provide foreign aid, or they'd at least have goods. They would have, you know, assets to provide foreign aid. So this one's kind of weird to say that it wouldn't have the money to be giving anyone money abroad. Kind of odd. It kind of sounds like this is just the ANCAP answer here. Next one, we should expand our influence abroad, and foreign aid is a good way to gain favors and popular opinion. Yeah, I mean, that was the old paradigm. That was the paradigm that existed for most of my life, is how people saw it, or at least how the powerful saw it. Next is, we should not be spending our taxpayers' hard-earned money on other nations. That's what a lot of conservatives used to say. These days, they don't even think that there should be tax money, essentially. Foreign aid can greatly improve the quality of lives of developing nations for relatively little cost, so we should provide it. Next is, we should put foreign aid into nations with poor standards. Improving the life there reduces worldwide refugees and protects our nation from them. Yeah, I mean, that's reasonable. That's reasonable, but yeah, it's kind of weird. These are all kind of weird because it's like most of the positions I've heard from people in government is like mixtures of these. They don't usually just hold one of these positions. They kind of hold a mixture of these positions. The next one is, the affairs of other nations do not matter to us. There is no reason to send foreign aid. Right. So this is the modern position of like the conservatives here in the United States, which is just like no foreign aid whatsoever, which is stupid because, as the second answer says, it expands our influence abroad and it gains favors and popular opinion, which gives us power. So if you're all about accumulating power, then you should be about using whatever means do it. And foreign aid totally does so. It creates soft power, which allows the state to exert itself in places it wouldn't otherwise be. So it's kind of self-defeating not to do it, but that's where they've ended up. I guess the anarchist position is supposed to be the first one. Any government should be minimal if it exists at all. But I don't know about this part about not having the funds to pay money abroad. That one's kind of weird. But I guess by the government, it means the state. Okay, so it means the state. So there shouldn't be a state. Understood. Then we've got power for policy setting. This is the 33rd of 51 questions, just to give you an idea of where we're at on our progress. First answer says, the executive of the nation should hold the majority of decision-making power and generally be the one to create policy. Absolutely disagreed. As I've said numerous times, that is a disastrous failure mode. That is poor political engineering. The more concentrated power is, the more disastrous the system you've created is. The next one is, an elected national legislative branch should primarily be the one to set policy for the entire nation and to overrule any laws at the provincial level. Yeah, absolutely not. That doesn't sound preferable at all. Next is, the military should ultimately hold power and the ability to set policy. All right. So here, I mean, that's a military dictatorship at least, right? So the other ones were weird to me because it was like only those who have, who are highly ranked in the military should govern or whatever. That one was weird to me because that's just not like generally how systems of government work. This one does make sense though. You know, the military should hold the power and have the ability to set policy. Yeah, that's a military dictatorship. Next is, no person or body should hold power over an individual. We should be free to live our lives. Yeah, I mean, that sounds like that would be the anarchist answer. Next is, the wealthiest individuals should hold power as they are generally the most capable and contribute the most to the nation. Yeah, I mean, that's certainly what capitalism believes. And by proxy, fascism basically believes that because fascism is so synthesized with corporations historically. But next is, policy setting power should lie within the executive branch, but through the appointed cabinet and bureaucracy who can better specialize their knowledge more than the executive. So here we have that's kind of how the USSR would do it, right? So, you essentially have all the power is centralized in the executive, but then they appoint a cabinet and the cabinet makes a lot of decisions. Then you have power should lie with the people directly, who should initiate legislation through citizen-initiated ballot measures. See, now that is closer to a form of like social anarchism, right? So like the people determine everything. They initiate all legislation. They create measures which everyone votes on. So I would have more specificity here than is provided, but I think that is the closest to a social anarchist position there. Next one is power to set policy should largely lie at the provincial or local level with limited national power. I think a lot of ANCAPs, probably like, night watchman state kind of stuff, they might agree with something like that. Next is power should be shared between the national and local governments roughly equally, and that is a description of American federalism. So the one I'm answering is power should lie with the people directly, who should initiate legislation through citizen-initiated ballot measures. That's the closest to what anarchists historically believe. Right to secession. Provinces should exist, but in most cases should not be given independence referendums, and certainly not as a right. Okay? Those who want independence should not be forced to remain a part of our nation. Any individual should have the right to take their own land and property and declare themselves independent without a vote. Yeah, that's pretty close to the anarchist position. We should not have provinces and be a unitary state, so there should not be anywhere clearly defined to be able to secede. Okay, weirdly circular argument. Provinces should not be allowed to secede. However, we should give states more flexibility in setting their own laws, such that they can pass the laws that they want, except in extreme cases such as violating human rights. Okay, so kind of the modern U.S. federalism. Next is provinces should have the right to secede. It should be possible for one to organize a referendum and secede if it passes with overwhelming support. That's what a lot of nations do. I'm going to put those who want independence should not be forced to remain a part of our nation. Any individual should have the right to take their own land and property and declare themselves independent without a vote. Yeah. That's not to say there won't be consequences, of course, but yeah. That's the anarchist position. Yes. But once again, it kind of differs. If you're looking at the modern world, if you're looking at the current state of existence, then, no, I probably wouldn't support like the South, trying to secede and do slavery, for example. It's not okay for someone to secede to do a genocide. There's certainly going to be military consequences to that. But in an ideal society, yes, freedom of association. So those who want independence should not be forced to remain a part of our nation. Any individual should have the right to take their own land and property, declare themselves independent without a vote. That is basically freedom of association. Next is districts. There should be a single non-elected ruler who represents everyone by considering the interests of the entire nation when making decisions. Absurd, doesn't work, etc. Next, we should have people represented in our legislature proportionally with their vote on a nationwide level. If 10% of the population nationally supports a party, 10% of the legislature should be that party. So basically a parliamentary structure. Representatives should represent an equal amount of land. If you've invested enough in the country to own an entire district worth of land, you probably have an interest in the nation's success and should be given a district worth of representation. No, that's really weird. Should represent an equal amount of land. Okay, interesting. I don't know why, though. No, that doesn't make any sense. That doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Just because you have a bunch of land, now you get a bunch of representatives? Like one person owns like 70 parcels of land and now they get 70 representatives? No, it's not at all how this should work. Next, the government should represent the people who represented it through the military and other national service. Here we go. All right, back to the military thing. Next, each person should look out for their own interests, not through government or voting, but through their own means. See, that sounds like ANCAP stuff. It's super weird. I can't tell if the person who wrote this quiz knows the difference between, say, like a social anarchist position and like some anarcho-capitalist, individualist stuff. It's not clear that they do, so I'm not going to answer that one. Next is we should have districts nationally with representatives that represent roughly the same number of people, but a guaranteed minimum representation for geographic areas. Right, so just a representative government. Next is the population does not need to be represented so much as all parties who the policy will affect need a specialized representative to analyze the issue from that perspective. That is the closest to a social anarchist position. Kind of are talking about like delegation, but it wouldn't be a single specialized representative. It'd probably be like councils of those who are affected. Next is representatives are interfering with democracy. Rather than representation, we should directly vote on all important issues nationally. See, it doesn't need to be that we vote on all of the issues nationally. It needs to be that those who are affected are the ones who decide. So it's like something in between these two answers here. So in between, the population does not need to be represented so much as all the parties who the policy will affect need a specialized representative to analyze the issue from their perspective. That's very similar to the maximum that those who are affected decide. And then the other one, representatives are interfering with democracy. Rather than representation, we should directly vote on all important issues nationally. That's also kind of similar to, just the people having power, horizontal power structures. I think it's closer. The one that says those who are affected decide is probably more important here. I think that is closer to the anarchist perspective than the one that just essentially is direct democracy, nationalized direct democracy through referendum. So we'll choose the population does not need to be represented so much as all parties who the policy will affect need a specialized representative to analyze the issue from that perspective. Next is the death penalty. Those who defy the state should be executed to ensure that those who remain obey. This is just, every time I read the fascist answer, it just sounds like some fucking Warhammer 40K shit. Like they it's just so fucking edgelord. Next, if people are found guilty beyond any shadow of a doubt for a particular heinous crime, they should be given the death penalty. I don't think the state should have the right to put anyone to death. The state is not a trustworthy party. The next one, there should be no prisons as such. If someone has committed an act where it is unsafe to allow them to go freely, they should be executed. I've known anarchists who believe this. I do not believe that. That is not how I don't think there should be prisons in the way they currently exist, but I don't think everyone should just be executed if there's a problem. Next, we should always try to rehabilitate, and criminals should still have a right to live and change, so the death penalty should be banned. That's probably going to be the closest to mine. The death penalty is an easy escape for especially heinous criminals and should be banned. I used to argue that when I was younger. I was like, I don't know, the death penalty kind of seems like they're getting off easy. If you're really wanting a punishment, it seems like life in prison is way worse. And the last one is the death penalty should be an option as it will reduce crime by serving as a deterrent. Actually, all studies done on the subject show that the death penalty does not work as a deterrent. It turns out that when a person is committing a crime that, they don't expect to get caught doing the crime. People don't usually do a crime thinking they will get caught. So almost no matter what punishment is chosen, it doesn't really act as a deterrent. I would say my answer is we should always try to rehabilitate, and criminals should still have a right to live and change, so the death penalty should be banned. Next, most important trait in a political leader. The most important quality in a leader is intelligence. We need someone who can understand problems and find solutions to them. Once again, it's kind of depends on what is meant by leader. If what we mean is a sort of horizontal organic leader, I don't have a problem with the concept. But if what we mean is somebody who's elected to make decisions for people, then we're going to have a problem. And that's something we've already run into on the test. So it's not clear what they necessarily mean by leader, but we'll see if we can figure it out. Next one, the most important quality in a leader is experience. We need someone who knows how to make decisions and understands how our government functions. So the first one, intelligence, there's a problem with that. And that is that many intelligent people do not know how to make good political decisions. They're often not good at determining what is the best decision when they have many put in front of them, when they have to balance the needs of many different interests. Intelligence doesn't necessarily allow you to do that. Sometimes you need emotional intelligence. And the second one, experience. Experience isn't always good. If your experience is in doing bad things, then experience is bad. I mean, look at Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer. These are very experienced people, but their experience actually makes them terrible leaders. The next one, the most important quality in a leader is political courage. We need someone who will make the decisions that need to be made, even if they are unpopular. I mean, I think that political courage is a better determining factor than the previous descriptions, but the idea that they would make decisions that are unpopular is not at all what I would hope to see in a leader. The next one, the most important quality in a leader is empathy. We need someone who is capable of understanding our issues and addressing them as we want. I think that's probably the best answer of all of these. The next one is the most important quality in a leader is power. We need someone who can influence policy through connections beyond the office they hold. That is the fascist position. And the last one is we should make our own decisions. We don't need a leader above us. So I think that one's the anarchist position. Once again, we see here that by leader, they actually do mean somebody who's making decisions for other people. And insofar as that is what they mean, then we disagree. Anarchists disagree. We should make our own decisions. We don't need a leader above us. Next, artificial intelligence. So the first one says, artificial intelligence risks displacing living, working people from their lifestyles and livelihoods. We should be hesitant to replace jobs with AI. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is very, this quiz has been around for a little while before that AI it really came into its modern incarnation. And this is more topical than ever. That's a big problem we're having, replacing jobs with AI. Next is artificial intelligence largely takes jobs from low-income workers and can hurt their livelihoods. That is not what we are seeing. It can also hide discrimination through training AI on biased data. We should limit its use. That is not what we're seeing. It actually turns out that AI is also stealing jobs from kind of like middle-income workers, like software engineers and coders and stuff. We're seeing all kinds of stuff get automated. Oh, also artists, right? Which are often people who are doing okay-ish. If you kind of succeed in the industry, you'll do okay. But those jobs are now being taken by AI as well. Third one, we should embrace AI, but must be sure to make sure there are adequate alternatives for the workers it will displace, and that any damage it can do is limited and it will protect privacy. Well, that was not a very good sentence. We should embrace AI, but make sure there are adequate alternatives for the workers it will displace, and that any damage it can do is limited and it will protect privacy. Wow, good luck on that one. I mean, that sounds like the ideal, but clearly the people who have the power to institute it don't care about that. Next, we should fully embrace AI. Soon it will and should be able to make decisions far more objectively and effectively than humans can. Absolutely not. That's nightmarish dystopia fuel. Not even just the fully embrace AI part, the fact where the AI is making decisions for us. That is terrible. That's nightmarish. People and companies should be allowed to use AI freely. So these are the only options. I don't think any of these are very good options. I think these all really sound like they were written before AI came into what it is now. I think that these do not contain the proper nuance that a lot of people would want to see in this subject. I mean, the first one, though, is kind of true. It risks displacing living people from their lifestyles and livelihoods, and we should be hesitant to replace jobs with AI. I mean, that is true. That is true. But, yeah, I mean, that's the one I guess is closest to my perspective. Yeah, we should be hesitant. That's definitely my position. Yeah, I think that's the best of the options here. Next is universal basic income. The first option says, I am opposed to a universal basic income. Working people should be guaranteed a living wage, and benefits for the unemployed and unable to work should be more than a UBI would be worth. The rich do not need that extra bit of income. Sure, okay. Next is, rather than starting taxation at 0%, there should be a threshold, and those below the threshold are paid, and those who make more than the threshold are taxed. And you should always receive more by working to ensure there's always an incentive to work. I mean, that sounds reasonable, but I can obviously just see the part about those who work always making more than those who get the UBI means that the UBI will be like starvation wages, essentially. Third one, the poor should be guaranteed essentials through government-run public options with discounted rates for the elderly and those in poverty rather than a UBI. I mean, yeah, that would probably be good, but I don't know why that would be superior to a UBI. Next, I support a UBI consisting of the profits from government-run companies to distribute their successes and ensure minimal risk for the less successful government-run companies. I don't see why that should be the way that UBIs run. Next, guaranteeing income is a dangerous idea that disincentivizes working. This would hurt the economy, and I cannot support it. Okay, that's some ANCAP shit. Next, I support a UBI. The poor should not have to prove their status of being poor and have the government manage how they spend their welfare for them. Yeah, I mean, like, of these options so far, that one's decent. Next is, I support a universal wage a bit lower than the average wage, more than a basic income. Okay. Those who cannot work due to medical conditions, temporary unemployment, or in retirement should receive it, and the unemployed should be guaranteed at least that much. Okay, those who cannot work should be guaranteed the average wage. Sure? Question mark? I guess. Yeah, I mean, a bit lower than the average. I would say, I don't know. That one's weird. I haven't thought about that one before. People should be guaranteed their needs. As such, income such as UBI should not exist. Oh, well, there we go. There's the communist answer. So I'll be answering that one. Yeah. The last one is, I support a universal basic income paid for by large companies outsourcing or automating jobs almost as much as the difference in cost to allow small businesses to remain competitive. Okay. So once again, we just run into this issue of like, do we mean in the current day or do we mean in an ideal society? In an ideal society, people should be guaranteed their needs. And as such, income such as universal basic income should not exist. That's my position. Next, private schools. Schools should be private, but the government should provide vouchers to the poor to ensure that every child is able to afford attending school. No, bad. Next, the state should own all schools. This makes it easier to ensure all our students have an equal opportunity to succeed. I mean, probably preferable. Next, there should be a mixture of public and private schools. However, public schools should receive a lot of funding to ensure our children are well educated and ensure they are competitive with private schools. Yeah, I mean, in our current society, that's probably how it should be. All schools should be public schools. However, parents and students should be able to choose which public school they attend rather than having it chosen automatically based on location. Okay, should be able to choose which they attend rather than have it chosen automatically. Okay, not sure about that, but maybe. Then there should not be public schools. The state should have no obligation to provide education to those who can't afford it. Wow. Yeah, no. Pass on that. I would say these all assume the continued existence of the state, basically. So insofar as there's a continued existence of the state, I think it's fine for there to be a mixture of public and private schools, and that public schools should receive a ton of funding to make sure that all of our students are well educated and ensure they're competitive with private schools. Yes. Next, drugs. We can use drugs to ensure people are incapable of causing trouble. We can mandate them and only provide them when people act in accordance with how the state requires. Well, that doesn't sound like a good idea. The state shouldn't probably determine that. Next, drugs are dangerous for our society and can tear apart families and relationships. Selling them for recreational use should be banned for our safety, and we should have programs to educate people on the dangers they pose. No, that didn't work. We've already tried it. Next, what you put in your own body is your own business. We should legalize drugs so they don't go to the black market. That's my position. We'll get back to that in a second. Next is bans on many drugs like marijuana were designed to disproportionately affect the poor and minorities. We should overturn most drug-related convictions and institute programs to help addicts get their lives back in order. We'll definitely agreed on that. That contains part of my belief as well, so that there's like kind of two that I might answer. But next is we should educate our children on the dangers of drugs and ban the most harmful ones, but ones like marijuana should be legal. So my perspective is that all drugs should be legal, but that there should be programs, rehabilitation programs for people to get them out of addiction. Also to create safe injection sites, to create places where it is safe to use those drugs without putting other people in danger. So kind of a mixture of two of these answers. And that is to say, whatever you put in your own body is your business, and we should legalize those drugs. And the bans on many of those drugs were designed to disproportionately affect the poor and minorities. And we should overturn most drug-related convictions and institute programs to help addicts get their lives back in order. So it's both. You know, like, I don't know which one of these to choose here. I don't like that it says we should overturn most drug-related convictions. I don't really care. Like, you could, I'd say free all drug-related offenders. So I guess, I don't know. This one's weird. I'm just going to say what you put in your own body is your business, because it just doesn't, I don't like the most drug-related convictions on the other one. Next, healthcare. Healthcare service should be private, but I will ensure that the government provides a single payer system to ensure nobody needs to worry about being able to afford the healthcare they need. 2, healthcare should be left to the free market. If healthcare providers or insurers aren't providing affordable service, they will not have customers and go out of business. Wrong. Next, I believe in having not just one, but many government-owned healthcare options. The cost for all of them will be paid for, but you can choose the one that you think has the best service to create competition between them. Okay. Sure. Next, both healthcare and treatment should be directly provided and guaranteed to all citizens by the nation. Yeah, that's my position. Next, I do not want to ban private healthcare or insurance, but I want a public option that will provide a fair rate. That will put private companies that are taking advantage of customers out of business. No, there shouldn't be any private healthcare. Next, I support private insurance and healthcare providers, but ensuring that prices are competitive relative to the cost to produce them, and prosecuting any cases of price fixing. No, absolutely not. There should be no private insurance or healthcare. Next, allowing healthcare providers to set their own prices freely allows them to fund additional research and benefits us all by providing new, better treatments. No. My answer is healthcare and treatment should be directly provided and guaranteed to all citizens by the nation. Next, prostitution. Unapproved sex should not be permitted. Unapproved sex should not be permitted, as it may result in children with less than ideal characteristics. Wow, the fascists are back. They've been gone for just a few questions, but they're back. Number 2, people should be free to do what they want with their bodies. If they want to sell themselves for sex, that's their own choice. That will probably be my answer. Next one, prostitution takes advantage of the poor by making them sell themselves off to rich people just to be able to pay the bills. It should be illegal to buy. Well, that one just is a faulty premise, as if prostitutes are mostly being bought by rich people. No, that is not what's happening here. Next, sex should be reserved for marriage or at least a long-term relationship. Prostitution and other sex work is immoral. Oh my God. Well, okay, there's the conservative position. Then it has, we should have regulated prostitution and other sex work because the alternative is a black market for it, which is much worse. I would say people should be free to do what they want with their bodies. If they want to sell themselves for sex, that's their own choice. Next, United Nations resolutions, main 6 bodies. Okay, so I guess this is asking questions about the member nations of the UN and what they should do. So, first, we should not be a part of the UN. Right? Okay. Number 2, I support having the UN or a similar new organization to replace governments such as our own to unify the world into a single country. I mean, yeah, that's kind of the anarcho-communist position, is that you essentially have, federations at every level, including the entire planet. We'll see what else is on the list. Our nation's laws should not be decided by other nations. We can consider UN resolutions, but only pass them as laws in our nation if they match our interests. So this is what the U.S. has believed for a very long time at this point. Next, we should attempt to use the United Nations to our advantage and support proposals that benefit us and encourage others to follow them. However, we should only follow the proposals that benefit us. That's the U.S.'s position these days. Use the UN to our advantage, support proposals that benefit us, encourage others to follow those, and then we should only follow the ones that benefit us. That's exactly how the U.S. has been manipulating the UN for so long. Next, our country should look out for our own people, not the people of the world, so we should not follow UN guidelines unless they happen to coincide with our own interests. That is the conservative position. Next is, we should follow UN resolutions and put international pressure on nations that don't to make the world a better place for everyone. I think, damn, how long did that last? I wonder how long was that paradigm after World War II? Next, we should not change our way of life because other nations say to. Yeah, well, don't care what you think. I would say the second one. I support having the United Nations or a similar new organization to replace governments such as our own to unify the world into a single country. So once again, it includes government here, which means state in their parlance, but it's the closest, I think, to the anarchist position. Next, creationism in school. The universe was created by a higher power. We must teach this in our schools, and evolution should only be mentioned when demonstrating how it is wrong. Wow. Okay, well, they just want to teach falsehood, I suppose. 2, schools should be required to teach evolution and evolution alone. That is science and facts, and pretending it is not does a disservice to our children. Okay. That's probably what I would say. But next is, the state must not take sides. Public schools should be required to teach both creationism and evolution, and students can decide for themselves what to believe. No, I disagree with this completely. We do not have to teach every single concept in every single class. In a chemistry class, you do not teach alchemy. This is just not necessary. You do not need to teach every single concept in a class about where humanity came from. You need to teach the concepts that are best proved, which is evolution. Next is, the church does not belong in our public schools. Private schools may teach creationism if they wish, but public schools should only teach scientific theories such as evolution. Yeah, I mean, I guess I wouldn't dictate to private schools that they have to teach evolution. I think the world would be a better place if they did, but I guess I would go insofar as we still have a liberal republic. The church does not belong in our schools, in our public schools. Private schools may teach creationism if they wish, but public schools should only teach scientific theories such as evolution. Next is national debt. We should be mindful of debt and pay it off when possible. When the economy takes a downturn, we should spend to help it survive, but we should cut government spending and pay back debt when it picks back up. 2, currency should not exist, and as a result, debt should not exist. Well, that'll probably be my answer. 3rd, the government should not have debt because it should not be spending. We should cut all spending programs and pay off the debt as quickly as possible. Sure, the ANCAP position, I suppose. Having national debt is not a bad thing, and we should not cut spending programs to pay it off, though we should have a plan before adding to it. Yeah, I mean, insofar as that we're still in a liberal republic, basically that. I don't care how much debt the nation has if we're still in a liberal republic. Next, we should take on debt both to improve the economy and to invest in our population in ways that will pay back more in the long run. We should pay for this debt through higher taxes on big companies. I think we should tax big companies and we should dump that money into paying for social services, but it's not clear how much that actually pays down the debt or that that's necessary to pay down the debt. Next, the government controls the currency. We can print more money when we need more money and legislate prices to stay level to keep inflation from becoming a problem. Yeah, that's probably true. That is a solution. That's one approach. That's the MMT approach. But insofar as that there is an anarchist or communist answer in any of these, those are the answers I will be giving. So I put currency should not exist, and as a result, debt should not exist. Even though, once again, I accept that we're talking about the difference here between an ideal future society and a society as it currently stands. So next is regional union plus the parliament, like the EU. First, this union allows us to better protect our people through international product safety standards and can allow us easier international trade deals, bring up our quality of life. Okay. Next, I support this regional union. We should use this common parliament to push forward legislation that benefits the people of all of our nations. Next, the freedom of our people is my first priority, and the regulations from this union could restrict the freedom in this country. I am opposed to being a part of it. Okay. Next, our laws are for our own people to decide, not those abroad. I oppose being a part of this union. It sounds like something that a right-winger would say. Next, being a part of this regional union gives us much greater say in international affairs, significant economic benefits, and allows us more diplomatic options. As such, I support being a part of it. That sounds like probably that would be my answer. Next, I oppose being a part of any such union. I have no interest in what the laws of our other nations are, but I am very much opposed to giving them a say in our laws. Right? Next, this union contains many nations with many languages, identities, and cultures, and they are able to maintain those cultural identities. As such, I see no issue with our membership. So all of these are sort of like, assuming we're dealing with the paradigm of the existing EU and making a decision about our position within the EU. So there's none of these that really represent the anarchist position. But, insofar as that we were to make the most consistent decision based on an anarchist position, it would probably be being a part of the regional union gives us a greater say in international affairs, significant economic benefits, and allows us more diplomatic options. As such, I support being a part of it. Next, refugees. We must have a system where refugees have background checks, but after they pass, we should let them in subject to conditions for integrating into our society. So that's kind of the liberal position most of the time. Next, we should accept refugees only if they are able to offer something to our nation, whether it is specialist talents or intel on the country they are fleeing. I know a lot of nations have that position. Next, if they can make it to our country, we should not deny them entry. They should have the right to be a part of our nation. So sounds like that will be my answer to this one. Next, these people could pose a threat to our citizens. We should accept very few refugees only after extensive background checks under strict conditions. So that's the conservative position. And then it is our duty to help people in need. We should take in as many refugees as we are able to comfortably support. Then lastly, refugees are not our problem. They should not be allowed to enter the nation. So I can't quite tell the difference between two of these, and that is, if they can make it to our country, we should not deny them entry. They should have the right to be a part of the nation. And the other one is, it is our duty to help people in need. We should take in as many refugees as we are able to comfortably support. Oh, okay. I guess the second one is like as many as we are able to comfortably support. So there's this caveat that maybe we would put it into it if we had too many people. Yeah, I mean, it's like I can't quite tell which of these. I would just say probably the first one. If they can make it to our country, we should not deny them entry. They should have the right to be a part of the nation. Next, election reform. We must reform our elections by expanding ballot access. Citizens should be automatically registered and sent a ballot. We should improve our election security through being more strict in ID laws and searching for cases of double voting. See, that's what the conservatives say because they're trying to diminish the number of people who vote. They're trying to make sure that the people who might vote for the Democrats don't get to vote. So that's the reason why they want "quote unquote" strict ID laws. They're just looking for ways to unjustly exclude people from the voting process. They don't actually care about double voting or ID laws. Those are all just fronts for them to exclude people from voting. Next, we should be making elections secure and open using internet technologies such as blockchain or allowing electronic vote delegation. Well, I mean, that sounds ideal, but not in practice. In practice, it looks like they're maybe hackable. So maybe not. Next, elections should be canceled as the law should not be decided by popular opinion. Okay. Next, we should reform elections by making it legal to sell your vote. I don't think that sounds like a good idea. So choosing the best of these answers, let's see here. I suppose, of these answers, we must reform our elections by expanding ballot access. Citizens should be automatically registered and sent a ballot. Insofar as that we keep voting as we do, that would be the best thing, I guess. Yeah. Next, internet service providers. we must make it feasible for people to start government-backed internet service providers in their area. These will be owned by the government and provided to everyone. However, people may choose which ISP they want among the options in the area. Yeah, I mean, it sounds good. Next, we should have a national internet service provider that guarantees affordable, reliable, high-speed internet through the entire country. Private companies will have to compete with that as a baseline. Okay. Through taxes, the government should subsidize multiple internet service providers, expanding to all areas of the nation in exchange for price guarantees to ensure that everyone has multiple affordable options for the internet. Okay. We should regulate internet service providers to ensure that they provide nationwide coverage and that there are multiple options everywhere to allow competition and prosecute them if the companies form deals that allow them to create regional monopolies. So this was what the United States has done for a very long time, and we've broken up a few of them. Next is internet service providers should not be regulated and will find the fair price for internet. These are always so funny. Like, imagine thinking that a corporation is going to do the right thing. Find the fair price. The fair price for a corporation is really just however much they can extract out of you. Which may vary based on how expensive it is to connect an area based on how much that is worth. Right, of course, yes. As we know, corporations are famously good at only charging people based on their costs. They certainly never ask for more than that. They're just saintly organizations. Next, it is expensive for ISPs to connect areas to the internet. They will do their best to ensure coverage at an affordable price and should only be penalized if they fail to deliver the quality and reliability of internet that they advertised. Okay, more over-trusting of corporations. High-speed internet service providers must be nationalized. They aren't able to have fair competition due to the cost of laying out cables, especially in rural areas. I mean, So here, we're stuck in liberal brain. We're stuck in the state form, and corporations and so on are all part of the picture here. And if that's the case, we should probably just have, let's see here, a national internet service provider that guarantees affordable, reliable, high-speed internet throughout the entire country, and private companies can compete with that as a baseline, if that's what they want to do. Now, the very last question here, right? And we're about to see the results, but this is the very last question on the quiz. Most important espionage agency tasks. The most important espionage task is for our domestic agency to track down people who entered the nation illegally so we can deport them. Wow, that is an incredibly short-sighted position, even for a right-winger. Next, the most important task is for our foreign espionage agency to uncover atrocities around the world and expose them. We should not even have a foreign espionage agency. Our domestic agency should be focused on uncovering and tracking down criminals and people who enter the nation illegally. Well, that sounds nice, but it turns out that when you have a bunch of opponents who also have foreign espionage agencies, that you probably still need to have one. The next one is the most important task is uncovering and tracking down the worst sorts of criminals who reside in our nation. Okay. Next is, we should use our espionage agencies primarily to identify terrorist threats that could pose a risk to our citizens. That is the post-9/11 consensus, I suppose. And then we should use our foreign espionage agency to attempt to infiltrate our enemies abroad and overthrow leaders who oppose us when possible. Yes, that's definitely modern U.S. hegemony right there. And then we should not have any espionage agency. So, yeah, in an ideal society where we didn't have any opponents across the entire planet, where there was nothing to worry about with people trying to sabotage us, yeah, we wouldn't have an espionage agency. That sounds phenomenal. But just like with the military question, insofar as that we are in a situation where we are still in some form of conflict with other national bodies across the planet, we will both need a military and espionage. That's just the sad reality of it. So, in that sense, the most important task for a foreign espionage agency would be to uncover atrocities around the world and expose them, I would suppose. That would be the thing, insofar as that we are in this situation where we are still, there are competing geopolitical blocks and so on. That is what it would have to do. Ideally, in some world where there were no more competing geopolitical blocks, then yeah, it'd be really great just not to have an espionage agency and not to have a military and, not to have police and all of that, right? I mean, I suppose you don't really need police in the same way, but, it just doesn't seem to me like that's really an appropriate answer here. But it occurs to me that the question or an answer like that is what they imagine the anarchist answer is. They're imagining the anarchist answer is just like, well, we don't have bad thing. It's like, well, it's going to be determined on our circumstances. So insofar as that we have one, I would say that its goal should be to uncover atrocities around the world and expose them. But the idea of not having an espionage agency at all in a situation where you have all kinds of opponents, that just seems impractical. You're going to have some form of espionage. I guess maybe the thing is you wouldn't have a single espionage agency though. So I don't know. Part of me thinks I should answer that because I think that's what they intend to be kind of the anarchist answer here. But another part thinks is just like, well, maybe I should just answer like the most practical answer, but I'm going to say we should not have any espionage agency. Cause I guess in my mind, what I'm saying is that, we wouldn't have a specific agency. We would have like a bunch of cells, but that was kind of true for the military question too. And on the military question, I gave a practical answer about a continued existence of a military for self-defense. This one's weird. I'm going to give the practical answer. This test result that I get, this will be the result of me giving a bunch of practical answers, not necessarily the idealist answer, not necessarily a sort of utopian answer for all of these. Numerous of these I gave practical answers about, if we're transitioning between here and there. So let's see what I get. So it says, let's zoom out a little bit here. For government, I got 66.9% anarchism and 33% direct democracy. So it says, for anarchism, this is how it describes anarchism. This test uses anarchists to refer to the belief that we would be better without a government. Anarchists believe we should look after our own interests without government interference and potentially disbanding the government. They believe that nobody should have power over another and emphasize individual liberty. So kind of as I presumed, it doesn't sound like they understand the entire body of anarchism. And that exactly describes why most of the answers that were meant to represent anarchism were very individualist in their thrust. So they kind of then understandably mixed that up with the concept of direct democracy. It says, this quiz uses direct democracy to refer to the belief that people should regularly vote on issues through national referendums, which I kind of like consciously avoided giving answers that indicated that. But I think that it doesn't really understand that anarchism has a structural imperative, that it actually does have various forms of deliberative democratic methods to solve problems. And so it thinks that direct democracy, that those anarchistic solutions are direct democracy. So let's read what it says. Through national referendums. They believe that the people should have a right to govern themselves and have a direct say on the policies that govern them. They are likely to support citizen-initiated ballot measures to propose policy. Yeah, so, what I think they probably don't understand is that anarchism includes a lot of what they just described there. Forms of national referendum, but mostly people who are affected deciding. Onto the economy, it says 100% communism, which sounds about right. This quiz uses communism to refer to the nation providing for its citizens in accordance to their needs based on what others can produce without any sort of currency system or payment. They usually do not believe in a national government managing the economy, but local communes that ensure needs are met. That's actually a really good understanding of communism. It makes sense. I'm an anarcho-communist. Next, we have society, 100% freedom. This quiz uses freedom to mean the belief and the right of the individual to do what they want without regulation or censorship by the state. This especially refers to the ability to have control of the individual's body and mind, as well as the freedom to use advances in technology to their full extent on an individual level. And yeah, absolutely, I agree with this characterization completely. Next is religion. It says 88.5% secular and 11.5% atheist. So it differentiates these by saying secular is this uses secularism to refer to the complete separation of church and state, but a complete lack of interference with private religion. This includes allowing private religious schools to teach religious beliefs, but keeping religion out of public schools. Additionally, they believe that the state should not favor any one religion. Yes, and this is because most of the questions that involved religion were within the framework of a liberal society, a society where there was this public-private distinction, and, I answered as best I could given those circumstances. And then the 11.5% atheist says, this quiz defines state atheists to believe that the government should be irreligious. They may believe that members of government and the general population can be religious, but they should not influence policy based on their religion. They believe students should only be taught science as facts, not religion. Which, yes, I agree. That is absolutely the case. And yeah, I'm fine with both of these characterizations. I think that they coexist with each other perfectly fine. Next is security. It says 69.8% humanist and 30.2% decentralized. So it says a humanist, according to this quiz, believes that most people are fundamentally good and that people should be trusted until they have shown that they do not deserve that trust. They believe in rehabilitation and the right to bear arms as a default right. Yep, that's pretty accurate. Yeah, they did a good job. 30.2% decentralized. Those who believe in decentralized security believe that the government should not be guaranteeing security and instead believe that people should take their own security in their own hands. They usually believe strongly in guns and oppose prisons and police. Yeah, this seems like a pretty good mixture of my beliefs. I think I pretty much agree with this characterization. Although, once again, it didn't really have options which represented the social anarchist position on social safety, which is to say, the use of militias and federations of militias and bodies where those who are affected decide and their conjunction with justice councils and things like that. So there weren't any answers that included any of those sorts of concepts. So therefore, it wasn't really able to suss out a social anarchist position on these concepts. And then the last one is foreign policy. And it says I am 100% minimalist. A minimalist, according to this quiz, believes in not having a sufficiently central government to be able to truly conduct foreign policy. They usually believe strongly in open borders and allowing people to come and go freely through the nation and generally oppose a national language or culture. Yeah, I think I mostly agree with that. Once again, I think this one's kind of a result of them not giving me options which represent my broader beliefs, which probably comes from the people who made the quiz not having a sufficient understanding of the concept of social anarchism or really just historical anarchism. I think that the people who made the quiz, it seems like they think anarchism is only individualist anarchism, and it seems like they're not entirely clear about the differences between a left individualist anarchism and a right individualist anarchism. So there were numerous times where the answers that were available were ones where I was like, I could see an individualist left anarchist or an individualist right, or I guess all right-wing anarchism is individualist anarchism. But I think you all get what I'm saying. This would have fit with either of those perspectives, and it's clearly the anarchist answer, but it didn't really fit with a social anarchist answer, and there wasn't really a social anarchist answer available. And so a lot of the time what I did is I just gave one which indicated, well, I don't really believe in the state, so I don't really believe in this form of centralization that you're discussing. It would be done through other means. So yeah, there just wasn't really, I would say, answers which were available to to discuss the concept of a more social anarchist foreign policy. And the same thing was kind of happening back here with government, where it was saying what I was describing was quote unquote direct democracy. But social anarchist sort of deliberative democracy might kind of sound like direct democracy. And we see this, of course, in a lot of the discourse around this topic of direct democracy, right? So I don't really entirely reject this characterization of 2/3 anarchism, 1/3 direct democracy, because I don't really have this strongly anti-direct democracy position that a lot of other anarchists do. So I'm fine with that characterization. But I do think it's mostly just coming from a limitation of the quiz to understand the finer points of different forms of deliberative democracy. It seems to think that, your options are anarchism, no government, direct democracy, everything determined by national ballot measure, and representative democracy, where, you vote for representatives, and then just kind of varying forms of those. That's the only, it seems like those are the three groupings that it's mostly concerned with. And then you have some forms of kind of autocratic dictatorial government. It's also considering those. So I actually think this was a pretty good quiz. I've taken it before. I don't even remember what I got last time, but yeah, no, I mean, these are the results I got. I'd be interested to know what y'all got. If you want to go take the same quiz and put your answers down in the comments, that would be interesting. Also, I'd like your insights on the different questions, do you think there were any where I kind of really deeply misunderstood what the question was saying, or what the available answers were saying? Or do you think there were any where I kind of missed the anarchist answer, when it came up? I'd be interested to know what y'all think about that. I think I might do a couple more videos where I take the political tests. I might even take the political compass, even though I know how much everybody seems to hate it, but I don't care. Yeah, I might take a few of these. If you liked it, tell me down in the comments below. Also, I just want to say, if you made it this far in the video, I really appreciate you watching the channel and getting this far in the video. And I also want to say that my patrons have been sort of dropping for the last few months, and it's understandable. I get why, everybody is kind of on hard financial times. But if you are one of those people that can step up, that does have liquid assets that you can spare, please consider becoming a patron at my Patreon, which is patreon.com/anarch. And you can pledge any amount of money you like. The main thing you get for becoming a patron is the pleasure of knowing that you're funding the channel, but you also get access to the Anarch Discord server, which is probably one of the best political spaces I've ever been in. I think that it has one of the healthiest cultures you will find in any sort of leftist political space. So if you want access to that, we are always discussing theory and history and praxis and everything in between. So just become a patron for any amount and you'll get access to that. But I think that is about it. So I appreciate everybody who has tuned in and watched this. Looks like it's probably going to be a 2.5 hour video. I appreciate all of you enormously. If it were not for all of you watching the channel, I would not be able to do the channel. And if it were not for my patrons, I would not be able to devote nearly as much time to making these videos. So I appreciate everyone enormously, and I'll see y'all next time.